very good evening to you and welcome to Channels Television's flagship program, Sunday Politics. I'm Terry Ikumi. Well, it's conversation and conversation, meetings and meetings, horse tradings left, right and center, just as the political season picks up. Well, former President Olusegun Obasanjo says he has no preferred candidate in the 2023 presidential election, but what he has is a national agenda for the country. Now, Obasanjo made this declaration after a visit to former head of state General Abdulsalami Abubakar at his home in Minna, Niger State. He added, however, that his visit to General Abdulsalami Abubakar was not political, but according to him, he decided to go see a brother who was a bit indisposed, and when he was abroad, he had to visit him now that he's in Nigeria. And when he arrived in London, he left the same day that Obasanjo left. So the two statesmen had earlier had a closed-door meeting which lasted for about 30 minutes. Now, many who have, witnessed this kind of conversation say that it's almost impossible for two heads of state, or two former heads of state, to meet and not discuss politics, especially considering the state of the polity now and permutations as to who will get whose support. And with the Rivers State Governor Wike on Friday, said the meetings his team held with former President Olusegun Obasanjo and some presidential candidates were in national interest and nothing personal as widely believed. So we will pick our conversation up from there tonight and expand into other national issues to help the voters or electorate decide whether or not they have the level of conviction that they require to pick a candidate ahead of the 2023 elections, and most importantly, just ahead of the campaigns, which will commence on the 28th of September. Now, let's get talking. I have a guest in the studio. His name is Anthony Ehilebo. He is a member of the digital team, digital media of Atiku campaign organization. Welcome to Sunday Politics.
Thank you very much, Terry, for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
And in our Lagos studio, we have the Southwest leader of the Labour Party, who is also a former political advisor to President Obasanjo, Akin Osuntoku. Good evening. Welcome to Sunday Politics.
Thank you very much.
So we had reached out to Bayo Nanuga, who is Director of Media and Publicity of the AEPC, to join the conversation. He hasn't shown up, but we're expecting another member of the All Progressives Congress, Ayo Yalowo, who is a member of the AEPC Presidential Campaign Organization. He's also a political economist. He will join us in a short while. But let's get talking now. Your principles. I'm talking about you, since you're seated, and of course the Mr. Osuntoku in Lagos. Your principals met last week with the Rivers State Governor. And while Atiku's camp came out of that meeting and said that Wike had agreed to work for the party, the Rivers State Governor, when he returned to the country on Friday, said nothing had been concretized. Now, this is after meeting former President Olusegun Obasanjo, meeting presidential candidates Peter Obi, Tinubu, and Atiku. Now, for a party man, what does that say? Because a lot of Nigerians are worried following the development, and they're curious as to what exactly is going on within the PDP that's making Wike speak with other party members. And most importantly, they want to know, how important is Rivers State to your party? And of course, Mr. Osuntokun's Labour Party. We'll come to him in a short while, but let me start with you, Ehilebo.
Well, I'm quite glad that there's a whole deal of interest in where our presidential candidate, Vice President Atiku Abubakar, has been in the last week. And for me as a party member, the most important and poignant thing for me to focus on is what we seek to offer Nigerians. For instance, Vice President Atiku has 5 cardinal points he wants to deliver on. And these points are so inimical to the survival of Nigeria. It would seem to me that we are in a place where time and destiny has put us before. This is reminiscent of 1979, 1999, when the same man, albeit in 1999, came in with President Olusegun Obasanjo, which you just did a story on. And they found Nigeria in almost the same state. Our debt profile was at about $21 billion to the Paris Club. And through a concerted effort, chaired by no less than Vice President Atiku Abubakar, we were able to retrieve Nigeria back from that cliffhanger. And if you are aware of how this government has funded itself, or how it funded itself in the very early days, it was still from that same Paris Club refund that Vice President Atiku Abubakar, chairing the economic team of the President Olusegun Obasanjo government, delivered to Nigerians. Now, it would seem to me that we are at that point again. Nigeria is at an all-time high in terms of its all the indices of...
If I may come in here,
yes.
The details of what you're trying to say, we will go into eventually. Yes. The question was more about the horse trading going on now and how important Rivers State is to Atiku Abubakar and indeed the PDP, because I will throw the same question to the Labour Party, because the meeting was also held between Nyesom Wike and the Labour Party presidential candidate.
I tried to steer us back on course, because Rivers State is just one state out of 36 states. No doubt we have a governor that has performed there, PDP governor, Governor Nyesom Wike, who seems to, maybe perhaps because of his PDP, and also the Labour Party candidate is also coming from PDP. So PDP must have something that it imbues in people that makes them attractive to other people, if you ask me. So when you talk about, when you drive us back to the topic of one state versus the real issue, which is Nigeria right now, it then tells me that maybe something interesting is going on there. But I'll tell you, statistically, for me, as someone who has watched elections over the last couple of years, in 2019, PDP brought to the table for Rivers State, the tally was about 474,000. So we do have states in the south that did far better. I'm not conceding to the fact that, or agreeing to the fact that Rivers had a peculiar problem where it was said allegedly to have been immersed by the military. But that aside, I think particularly to our presidential candidate, everybody is an all-welcome party. We need the governor of Rivers State. But I'll tell you, the party is way bigger. The party right now is doing the backroom work it needs to do. As we speak, the candidate of the party is in Kano State, where he's due to receive the former Senator Shekarau. And also, he actually, if you follow the story, Shekarau is actually dropping his senatorial ticket that he got from NMPP to come to Atiku, and that tells you a story. The same thing happened in Katsina yesterday. So we have an alliance that is working according to our political plan. So I don't think that Governor Wike, as he promised, will work against the party, because a lot of people say this, and I'm wondering, I mean, he has a dog in that fight. In the elections, he has a governor that he particularly brought for the party and said, I feel this guy is going to do well after me. And that governor is a PDP governor. So I don't see where Governor Wike has that mind. And he has said it several times, I'm not going to work against my party PDP. So I really want us to quickly pivot away from issues that are not so important to our national discourse. Because for me, we have issues that we need to discuss. Just last week, we had the NBA conference. And something interesting happened at that conference, which would seem to me that every Nigerian missed. The ABC vice presidential candidate, on a platform no less than where you have the largest gathering of lawyers, actually told Nigerians that he was going to commit a constitutional coup. And when you ask what's a constitutional coup, I'll define it as someone who is willing to use tools within the Constitution and overreach to execute powers that he has not. On a national podium, the vice presidential candidate of this is very important.
Just a second, you hold that thought, because we would need to expand on that particular thought. But as I said, the first question I threw to you, I think I'd like to throw to the Lagos, to the Labour Party's representative, Akin Oshuntoku, to find out how important Rivers State is to the Labour Party, that's making the Labour Party presidential candidate hold talks with the Rivers State governor. You recall that they had met in Port Harcourt, and now they've met again in London.
Look, I agree with the previous speaker that it really doesn't matter. It's an element of transactional politics. You know, when we are practically competing for power, we're going to engage in different things, conspiratorial, whatever, they call it real politics. So you may not, there is no need to split hairs over those kind of issues. No, everybody is important in politics, in River State government. So if the candidate, our candidate, must have a reason for wanting, for considering it important enough to go and meet with him. He was going to, well, it's already in US, to engage with Nigerians in the diaspora. So it was a stopover for him in London. But beyond that, I think, I agree, I concur with you. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of where we are and what, You did mention a particular topic that I think is very important. Now, to proceed with some clarity, let us formulate the problem we are trying to solve that faces Nigeria today. So I come to the conclusion that the overarching problem of Nigeria today is political mismanagement on a colossal scale, regardless of the motivations. The core components of that mismanagement are division, alienation, and malicious nepotism. So how do you, having formulated the problem as such, how do you respond to it? Right. The response coming from the three frontliners, so to say, you have two that are incurably defective. You cannot address division with divisiveness. Those two parties, the APC and PDP, they are guilty by the constitution of their presidential ticket of that flaw of divisiveness. So without doing much already, there's that alternative that is compelling. There's no rational analysis of Nigeria's problems that you will make. Let us assume that you have a computer in which you feed the problems of Nigeria. You feed in the profile of the presidential candidates, then identify what you are responding to, and ask the computer to come up with a scale to grade those contestants. There's no rational person who will not grade Peter Obi far above those two. So this is the problem, but the previous speaker did say, and it's very important, and this kind of thing should not be waved aside. They are in the first place, the conventions of both the PDP and APC are the typical problems that Nigeria have. So you have a set of people wanting to continue with the problem. There is no way you can despise corruption and take part in the convention of those two parties the way they did it. Fucking up 400 million naira as nomination form, which meant nothing to them. The other one, 40 million, they turned into a bazaar. So that is already a disqualifier. Right? And then, of course, you go forward with the constitution of those two presidential tickets. Now, the vice presidential candidate of APC, he has a record. He has a record of overreaching himself, of hubris, of, So what he said at that forum, if that is what we have in store for us, then Nigerians, the choices are clear. How can a running mate go on in a conference anywhere to say that you will be in charge of security and your principal will be in charge of... Imagine Kamala Harris in the US addressing the American Bar Association and say, look, I'm going to take charge of the security and Biden will take care of the economy. So look, and so it is self-evident, the impossibility of this kind of politics is pretty evident. They are giving you an indication of what they are all along the way. Right? First with the convention,
the point you're making,
with the constitution of their presidential ticket.
Mr. Oshuntoku, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Just a second. So I'd like to allow Mr. Hilebo come in here because the point you're making stemmed from what he had started talking about. But before you get into that conversation, let me just state clearly that we had invited Mr. Bayo Nanuga, who is the Director of Media and Publicity of the Tinubu APC Presidential Campaign Organization, and he had agreed to come for this engagement, but he did not show up. So just to put that out there. Your point, please.
Well, if I were him, I'd probably not want to turn up the answer to this sort of, because this misfire. And again, I say, I'm glad my brother, who was with us in the PDP, like I say, it's all PDP people out there. I'll give you the context of this conversation. Here you have a vice presidential candidate. I'll go into the context of the individual and his antecedents, and then I'll tell you where he made a comment. He goes on the AGC of the Nigerian Bar Association. And by the way, it's not the first time. In 2018, President Buhari went to the NBA and said national security supersedes the Constitution and the human rights aspects of the Constitution, in a way saying that the national security of the country supersedes the Constitution. I mean, on the floor of the... And then move forward to 2 years after that, in 2022. You hear a vice presidential candidate actually sit up at the NBA and say he will lead the troops. Section 230 defines who the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is, and it's specific that the president is the commander-in-chief. Section 218 is specific about the roles that the president, the commander-in-chief, appoints the heads of the security force. And if he decides to delegate that authority, he can delegate it to members of the armed forces only. And you have someone who is going to be the president, a heartbeat away from the president, saying that he's going to take charge of the military and relegate the president to the traditional role of the head of the economic team, that he did it in Lagos, and so he will do it at the federal level. And you start to wonder, this man is going to swear to an oath. There's a real possibility that he becomes president, that ticket becomes viable. And then this man has told you ahead of time. Let me tell you about this character we call, or the individual, or the vice presidential candidate of the APC. This is the same man. When the Chibok incident happened, now Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, where we discussed earlier, issued then, as junior minister, issued a directive that move all secondary school students to the capital and have your exams there. Governor Shatima ignored this directive and opened the door to a profitable venture where terrorists now see it that it is a prime thing to kidnap students, and it hasn't stopped since that day. Now, let me tell you another incident. Christians were about to celebrate a very sacred festival to them, Christmas, in Madala, Abuja. There was a bombing. The mastermind of that bombing, who incidentally is at large today, Kabiru Sokoto, was arrested in the government lodge of Borno State when Kashim Shettima was governor of Borno.
Are these facts? That
These are facts. He was arrested by the DSS in the governor's lodge. Till today, we have not been able to disassociate him from tales that align him with this terrorist organization.
So how does that explain? How does that become viable if he's not been prosecuted in that regard till today?
The question is, this is the person that will arrogate to himself at a forum where lawyers have gathered, the biggest forum of lawyers, that he will take charge of the responsibilities of the commander-in-chief. And somehow we overlooked it as a country. People were more interested in his dress sense and his sneakers. But do you know the funny thing? The person that actually put it out in public was an SAN. Festus Keyamo put that on Twitter, and that's why we saw it.
Let me go to Mr. Osuntokun in Lagos. While it would seem that, of course, you and the Labour Party and then Anthony in the PDP will take a swipe at the APC, one of the clear question I would ask you is, with regard to political will, as far as security is concerned, why would anyone pick Peter Obi ahead of Atiku if you've X'd out the All Progressives Congress now?
Why would anybody pick what?
Why would anybody be with regard to the fight
Yeah, I get your point
against
now.
insecurity ahead of...
Now, maybe you have a narrow definition of insecurity. The security crisis that we face today is a subcategory of the political mismanagement I was talking about. Now, when you are confronted with challenges, you mobilize your citizens in any social unit that you have. To the extent that the members of that unit are disunited, maliciously so, it is to that extent that you are ab initio a failure. Without it, it's just insecure. Look, I don't need to go into particulars, but this is a problem that this government, you talk about national unity and integration, right? The president likes talking about it. Go and look at his practical records. Sometimes a day after making such, carrying to, sucking up to what he calls national unity and integration, is as if they have a different meaning of what unity and integration means. You cannot promote unity and integration with division, with malicious nepotism. Listen, look, and you can come up with practical experiences. You are talking about security. Now, under this president, we have had 3 chiefs of army staffs. All the three of them, they are northern Muslims. Is that a coincidence? Is that an accident? Is that the president so sensitive to the complexity and the plurality of Nigeria? You have a national secretary, national security advisor.
Just a second. I feel you may have missed the question.
Which question?
You have already stated clearly that the All Progressives Congress is incapable. And I asked you, in comparison with former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who is now the PDP presidential candidate, why would anyone pick Peter Obi to be Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces to battle security ahead of Atiku Abubakar? The APC is not here to speak for itself, so it's best
that is precisely what I was doing.
Go at yourselves.
If you recall, I told you that your own definition of insecurity is narrow. It's a subset of a major crisis. I don't define security. You want me to be talking about saying that you buy fighter jets, you will do that? No. The earlier speaker spoke of the context. You situate the problem that you have within a context so that you can get the rightful answer. You don't have, are you saying that insecurity in Nigeria today is not related to the division and alienation within the country? This is where all these things take root, right? Many of these violence we are seeing all over the place. They are manifestations of no sense of belonging. People don't have a vested interest in the peace and stability of Nigeria. You don't treat what you love, what you like, by treating it by causing bloodshed, or the person who steals 100 billion naira, you don't treat what you appreciate, what you want. You don't treat that way. The way Nigeria is being treated by both the president and the citizens is that they don't have a stake in the durability of the country itself. So I don't see how your own definition
Once
of
again,
security...
Mr. Helabo would like to come in here, but I'm still trying to understand your response. Because someone like Peter Obi, there had been allegations that while he was a governor of Anambra State, that insecurity was not something that he was able to curtail while he was governor. Now he wants to be president. And so my concern and the question I asked you was, in terms of tackling the insecurity, beyond knowing the challenge, what's the solution? I ask this question because on a number of occasions we've had the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party. We've also had Mr. Peter Obi, who have always insisted that they understand the challenge, but they don't want to divulge or talk about the issue of security. Is that reassuring enough for Nigerians to vote for the Labour Party? So in comparison with what they have and the PDP, what should Nigerians go for, and why?
Mr. Interviewer, look, I am a student of Nigerian politics, especially war, crisis, and strategy. I should know what I'm talking about, right? They tell you that war is a continuation of politics by other means. What that tells you is that the war you are seeing has a root from where it developed. If you want to look for Peter Obi's nitpick on him or his inadequacies, that is up to you. What he did in Anambra that I have seen so far, and nobody has contradicted it, was the extent to which he was able to contain the festering crisis there. So, look, I don't know your own definition of security crisis or insecurity, but I've just told you now. They are inseparable from the political context in which it is taking place. So if you want to address security in Nigeria, you've got to have a mind with that. This is not what you say. Before General Buhari came to office, was he not talking about how you are going to contain, as a general, as this and that? And then he got into office. And by dint of his own style and substance of his government, rather than abate, the security crisis kept escalating. So how do you divorce? And I'm telling you, division. Divisiveness is contradictory to unity or whatever it is. How many, those whom he has appointed as Inspector General of Police, please, I'm telling you, if you don't want a broad-minded answer to you have your own idea of what to say. But I'm telling you that anybody who wants to confront the security challenge facing this country, you've got to face the political mismanagement squarely. Get Nigerians together. Mobilize them as a family.
Let me bring in Anthony Hilleboy, please. Let me bring Anthony Hilleboy. In terms of fighting insecurity, just like Mr. Shutokuno just said, that Nigerians had high hopes for President Buhari just before he came in because of his antecedents as a military general at the time. Your principle, why should Nigerians trust him with insecurity?
Well, I think, Terry, I understand Mr. Oshitoku's dilemma, because even the response he was giving you is a response that we all know is the response of Vice President Atiku Abubakar. He was asked this question in an interview, and subsequently we had the interview of the Labour Party candidate or the Vice President, where he said, they have, I think it was you, and he said they have the solution. But Vice President Atiku Abubakar has been very clear about what needs to be done about our security. First of all, the first comment he made about it was the architecture itself, the non-inclusion of other regions in Peking. And this is coming from a northerner, by the way. And he identified it as, how can we have service chiefs across board that are from one region and have been perpetually unable to resolve this issue? And he talked about the entire mindset of the military feeling like an inclusive military. That first of all, we needed to get the mindset of the military right and our security agencies understanding the bigger problem, which is the safety and sanctity of the country at large, not an ethnic problem that we need to resolve, and not one that we need to empower our neighbors or out of distrust for whether the military would possibly coup him. He decided to stick with people from his own ethnic background. That is the first problem. And I think if you look at the answer he was trying to give you, he picked up aspects of what Vice President Atiku Abubakar had inundated that he wanted. Clearly has been a leader in providing security solutions by saying, I will, if need be, I will increase what is going to the military, but I will ensure that people are held accountable for positions they are given to manage.
All right. I think we could take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll talk about 2023 and the kind of country we want in details. We'll also look at the antecedents of your principles. And hopefully, we can get details as to what exactly they plan to do should they become president in 2023. Please stay with us. We'll talk about 2023 and the nation we want. Welcome back to Sunday Politics. We're still talking about 2023 and the nation we want as a people. My guests have just been joined, or we have just been joined by a member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Ayo Oyalo. Welcome to Sunday Politics.
Thank you. Good morning.
Let me just speak it from here, because before you came, both the PDP representative and the Labour Party representative had accused the vice presidential candidate of the APC of what you termed, what Anthony termed a proposed coup. He said that your vice presidential candidate had said that he would be in charge of security if his party wins in 2023, and that's unconstitutional. How do you respond to that?
Good evening. I didn't hear how they put it, but I know it is their job to misinform people, and whatever is said to deliberately mispresent it. It's a team work. You are going to have a president and a vice president. When he said he will be in charge, he will not be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Definitely, he will be the vice president by constitution. But it's a team. What he's trying to say is that probably because of his experience coming from where used to be a hot spot, that's Borno, he will be able to leverage on that. And I don't see anything wrong in that. He will not be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. We know he cannot be. So it is clear that the opposition deliberately will misrepresent whatever he said. They will deliberately amplify whatever they want to amplify. But it is left for Nigerians to discern. I mean, Nigerians are not stupid people. Everybody knows that the president ordinarily will be, by the constitutional power given unto him, be the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that will not change.
So you're confident that going into 2023, that the Nigerians would give the APC another shot, regardless of the state of the security in the country. What would the APC do differently in 2023?
You see, it's easy for us to sit down here and say everything we want to say. Yes, there are issues of insecurity. Nobody can doubt it. But you cannot say that the current APC government has not tried to do what should be done. Yes, it was before we came into power as the APC government. I'm not in government, so I don't want to let people not misunderstand what I mean. Before the APC came into power, we had the northeast of Nigeria was completely almost ungovernable. Today, that is not the story. Yes, clearly, some of those fighters must have run away because of the heat and moved into other places. And you see, it's easy to also point at failings and pretend that there are no victories. In the past few weeks, we know that the Tucano jets that were bought by the president were clearly to be used for this kind of fight. But because it was in the original agreement that it was going to be used against terrorists, the bandits have been designated as terrorists now. They're no longer bandits, so you can use them, but you still needed the clearance before you can start using it. And the moment Nigeria got the clearance, we could see what has happened in the last 2-3 weeks. But of course, the press is not talking about it, and the opposition will not talk about it. It makes them feel good to keep talking about insecurity as if it gives them some kind of orgasm. But we've been having huge security, a lot of victories in the last few weeks. So, like the president and the vice presidential candidate of the APC said, we will, whatever this government has done well, especially in terms of infrastructure, they will build on it, and the areas that needs adjustment and continuous working on. You see, you can't solve security problem forever. In one fell swoop. Every country in the world has a security challenge. The United States of America, that is supposed to be the world #1 superpower, every day you have gun violence, you have, at least on a weekly basis you hear, but you will not close down the country because there are pockets of insecurity. You will always try to work around it and ensure you solve the problem. Before, monies that were meant to use to equip our military were being shared by these people like Bade, Souvenir. Today, we see equipment being bought. We see hardware, military hardware being bought. Yes, there will always be insecurity, but that the president has not done his job is a fallacy. And unfortunately, wherever there have been victory, it's been underplayed. So it's easy to, I mean, 2 military men were caught just a few weeks ago. They killed somebody, and as we speak, they've been dealt with, they've now been handed over to the police to do their job in terms of the civil litigation. They've been dealt with by the military laws. This does not happen in the past. So we've seen policemen who have been charged for doing wrong things on the street. Today, about 2 in the last few weeks have been removed from police and going to be punished. So it tells you that things are working, even if we have some major, some issues
let's go to something else and find out if it's actually working. Let's go to Lagos now and talk to Mr. Akin Oshuntokun, who's the Southwest leader of the Labour Party, and find out what the Labour Party thinks about the state of education in the country and the root cause, and possibly how the Labour Party intends to solve the issue should it win in 2023.
I don't know. You have to be specific. I assume you are talking about the ASU crisis, right? That's negotiation. That is, look, again,
education general, the education sector generally.
The education sector generally, that will take a whole day to address meaningfully, right? And that will take it, that also, because there's an element of it that is constitutional. I don't think the federal government, for instance, should take part in primary education under any circumstance. But that's why I said, look, anyway, it's a vast, very vast subject that we can spend the next 1 hour talking about it. The most topical thing about education today is the state of the tertiary institution, as represented by the ASU crisis. Now, again, of course, this government has, is constant in saying one thing and doing another thing. The ASU had an agreement, right, with the government on how to proceed. Where it became difficult to sustain probably what it would take to solve the problems that we're talking about. Now, you don't then go ahead and start threatening them that you won't pay their salaries, you won't do this, you won't do that. And of course, the Minister of Education, who is in charge of the negotiation itself, to show that, people who have bad faith, when they talk. He was the one engolding ASU, I think 8 years ago. ASU should not relent in striking. They are doing a patriotic job by going on strike. That was actually his own position. Now, so he finds himself precisely in which he can then exercise authority according to his own analysis. And then, but all of a sudden, the same ASU now has become a demon. So education in Nigeria, as I said, is part of the... Look, Nigeria, you cannot nitpick. What Nigeria is facing is a systemic crisis in which you cannot isolate one sector for attention without addressing the whole. If, for instance, the security that we are talking about today. Okay, if you, let's say you solve the problem of ASU, and then they go back to school. And maybe the following week, some bandits go to that campus, kidnap 80 people. So these are the ways problems, but there's nowhere you cannot isolate a specific, issue or challenge of this government. That's why we advocate the approach of constitutional reforms. You take it as a whole, a holistic appreciation of the challenges that you have, because they are all messy. It's true. I was reading a report before I came here about the Oronsaye report on how to respond to the, heavy current budget they have in the country, and recommended, measures, Now, going through that, what he said, what the paper said, the logic was compelling. That really, there are agencies or parastatals of government that are being duplicated all over the place. And also, you have that, but again, Nigerians, we are good at producing papers and whatever it is, we overanalyze. The problem is the implementation gap. This president, when he got to the office, the first thing he said was that he would throw into the archives, that whatever Jonathan did is for the archives. So how the country can progress under that situation is not. People have been talking about national dialogue. It's not funny. It's not a joke. There is nothing you can do in Nigeria today without some kind of, stimulating consensus, stimulating good faith, and things like that. And so you stop ASU problem. What about the medical sector of society, the medical colleges and things? What would be? Don't they have problems that you need to solve? And what the economies? Look at the foreign exchange problems that we have. Now, look, every Nigeria is getting poorer by the day because of the free fall, of the naira. As the naira is depreciating, so is your pocket, getting poorer. And all those, if your naira is worth $1 today.
All right, Mr. Oshutoku.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, let me go to Anthony Ayilebo now. Critics of Mr. Atiku Abubakar question how involved or interested he would be in education, especially public education, when he operates a private institution. How do you respond?
I think one thing that has remained constant is that throughout the show I have given you solutions, and I have spoken to what Vice President Atiku Abubakar has said in the past and what he believes in. This is a man that's been here, like you said, he has, from the primary school to the university, he has invested in education as a businessman. Now, I remember in 2019, he was asked the question what he would do differently, and he gave the allusion as even a political solution when he went to Anambra and found out that Anambra schools had not operated for a while, and that when he took the standard and went to the president and said, we cannot allow this governor to come back. And he went as far as saying for the basic primary education that was in the constitution for local governments, that he will go as far as when he comes in, going to the National Assembly to make it a penalizable offense for local governments not to invest at this level when the funds are there, because this is someone that has had experience in dealing with these issues. You find out that states will have UBEC funds, will have basic education funds, that because they do not want to make their contributions to these funds, they cannot access it. And these funds would have helped them in growing our educational sector. I think for Vice President Atiku Abubakar, education is one of the pillars that he intends to focus on. And he has provided multi-level solutions. Going as far back as saying we will even look at how schools are managed, how to bring in investors to invest in our educational system. There's a plan to open the Nigerian market, because if you look at our sheer population as a country, we have a thriving, an almost immeasurable number of people that if we educate them and give them the basic tools, even just vocational education, you provide artisan spread to supply the entire West African or African chain that requires these people as human capital resources. So I think for us in the PDP, and if you listen to my brother in Lagos, who incidentally, like I say, is an original PDP man, he seems to understand and grasp that these issues are issues that require experience. And as we can see, this government hasn't made investments. My brother from the APC will agree. We're looking at the budgets over the 7 years that they've come in, and looking at where they've ended up with the ASU strike, and looking at the status quo of our education across board. You will agree with me that this government has not prioritized education. It has not made education a forefront. And in fact, the two key factors identified by Bill Gates when he came to Nigeria, I think 2-3 years ago, was that the healthcare sector and education sector are sectors that he's very interested in encouraging the Nigerian government to invest in. But we have seen a lack of desire. As we can see as evidence in the fact that the tertiary institution in Nigeria has been shut down for close to 7 months now. At the last International Youth Day event that Vice President Atiku Abubakar went, he made a solemn promise to young people and said, as long as I am president of Nigeria, no Nigerian school will go on strike, that he will do everything possible. Because if you look at what this government is misapplying money to, you'll find out that they could have funded to a large extent or entered into some sort of negotiation with ASU long before they went on strike. And yeah, okay, yes, we agree that You can say someone doesn't deserve to earn a salary if he has worked for it with them. But how about reaching a concise agreement with them and say, hey guys, look at the state of the economy. Let's get to we've had situations where when PDP was in power, President Jonathan, there was a strike action. And he said, I will take charge of this particular action. And he went into closed-door meetings with us, and they called off their strikes.
Let me bring in Mr. Oyalawo here. He doesn't seem to agree with some of your,
he may not agree.
Submissions.
I don't think he
have a defense.
Well, I don't care about what his defense is. I'll just tell you what I think my own principal will do if he becomes president. And I just want to add that we were all living witnesses to how wonderfully Atiku Abubakar helped education. Under him, there was a huge ASUU strike, and it was during that time the man built his own university. So you see any story, we can come on air and say it. It's normal. However, thank God that Ashwaju does not have a private university, but you can check all the universities in Lagos, they are not on strike. So it tells you the investment that he has made in education when he was governor, and it has continued. Today, Lagos institutions in Lagos State are not on strike. So it tells you that he understands what it means and what it takes to educate people. And then I think we make so much noise about tertiary education that we actually don't always understand that tertiary education is not a human right, in quote. I mean, basically, by WHO standard, primary and secondary school are definitely, you must give it. In fact, it's a right. It's actually a criminal offense not to allow people to go to school. And I think those are under the purview of the local and the state government, and we need to invest in those areas more. You see, if we do so well in our primary and secondary education, we will not have so much problems with the university. The reason is that even if you go to the university today, you see some of the people we produce, we call graduates, you'll be sad. You'll be really sad. So we need to develop the bedrock of education. No matter what we do or we say about ASUU, which is always going to be there, ASUU has always been on strike. I remember as a student in the 90s, I had an entire session cancelled because of this same ASUU issue under Babangida and Abacha. Between both men, we had a whole session. We didn't have 1994-95 session in Nigeria. You can check. No Nigerian has a matric number of 95/. So it's always been an issue with them. And probably we need to look at, I'm not saying this is because the manifesto we're still awaiting, I'm not saying this is what Ashwaju will do, but I think we need to look at a system where maybe the federal government need to divest itself from some of these things. Let's leave tertiary education the way other countries run it. If you go to a Ghana, for instance, people will tell you it's better, but nobody is telling you what they are paying as fees. So ASUU want, they want autonomy, but you still want someone to fund it, and then you don't want the person who funds it. It's not working. So probably we should give the universities full autonomy and let them run it so that the best and brightest of us can now be either on scholarship or people can access student loans and so many other things like that. That way, we will not have a bunch of unionists. Look at the man who is even the head of ASUU. He insulted ASUU in State University, called them quacks or something. So it tells you that these guys are just bloody unionists who really don't care about the life of the children. He also agreed in some areas that when you are on strike, you're not supposed to be paid. I mean, it's a universal law. So now the agreement has been reached. Go back to school, they say you must pay them for 6 months that they did not work. Now these are issues that must be resolved by probably federal government looking critically into this tertiary education and look, let's completely give the universities the autonomy they need so that universities can run without all these unnecessary hiccups that we are facing.
All right, just before we go, we're almost out of time, but this issue is very important, and it's regarding the power sector and the concerns within the power sector. Your principal has faced some backlash from union workers, electricity union workers, who have complained about his privatization plans and say that he just wants to finish what he started under Obasanjo by privatizing the sector and giving it to his people. So let me ask you this question. Why should Nigerians trust Atiku, considering the state of the power sector, which was privatized under him, and that's a subject of investigation now as we speak? Why should Nigerians trust Atiku with the electricity, with power improvement in this country?
Well, Vice President Atiku Abubakar has shown dexterity in what I call business management portfolios. Look at a case in point, our telecom sector. He led that privatization effort. But as you know, government is a continuum. This process, I know, had to have follow-on processes like the unbundling of then NEPA. It went to PHCN, it was unbundled. And then you had the segregation of the power sector, where you had DISCOs, the transmission company of Nigeria, and then you had the tariff managers, which is MBETs, and all of that coming together to form the power sector holistic reform. I think this reform were pushed further by the President Jonathan administration, who then broke it down to TCN and sold off the DISCO company. So it wasn't particularly all Alhaji Abubakar. He initiated, it was his brainchild. It was a brainchild that we needed to privatize some level and allow desegregate. Of course, and that goes back to his restructuring plan, where he has now, again, against any other candidate, has provided a clear path as to what he wants, saying that he's going to give you a mixed basket. For instance, why do we have coal, a lot of coal sitting in Enugu, and that's not going into powering our energy sector there? And having an energy mixed basket, as he has proposed, will resolve a lot of the energy problems we face as a country. So you have to look at whether you're going to use wind vanes in the north to provide wind energy. You're going to look at the massive amount of sunlight we have in Nigeria. Are we going to reduce tariffs to import solar panels, for instance? Those are things that Vice President Atiku Abubakar is, as a businessman, is aware of, and understands that if you put this collectively together with the sense of someone who has managed businesses before, you will power Nigeria.
Our time is almost up. Let me quickly go to Mr. Oshintoku in Lagos to get his final words. But in getting those final words from you, let me draw your attention to the concerns of election observers and civil society organizations regarding the state of the polity. They are worried about the toxicity of the conversations going on in the public space ahead of the elections. How do you think political parties and should come in to address these issues and at least get their followers to be civil in these conversations?
Well, it's to lead by example. And the one recommendation that a presidential candidate keeps making is that, look, when you are engaging in discussions, you know, and things like that, try and be civil. It's not at the end of the day, those whom you have had partisan, you know, dealt with are still citizens like you, brothers. So at the end of the day, you are still going to come together. So you don't use, you don't allow yourself to get sucked in by the emotion and passion of the system. But having said that, whatever anybody does, whatever Peter Obi does, the Nigerian environment has been inseminated with mitigated toxicity, right? I listened to the APC representative and I shake my head. That anybody can be saying the kind of things, look, the president said he negotiated with terrorists, right? And they didn't keep their side of the bargain. I'm giving you this example, and it is typical. That is how this government, that's what they do, right? So Nigeria going forward, fortunately, we have high-placed groups of statesmen, like the one headed by General Abdulsalami Abubakar. We have civil societies all over the place, and of course, the international community, right? I myself, when I was coming, that was the burden that I was carrying.
Our time is up. I'll just allow Mr. Oyalo to say a quick word just in response to you, if he has, in 60 seconds so we could close this.
Well, I think, like you rightly posited, the conversation has to be issue-driven. He called me his brother now, which is very good. But when he goes on Twitter, the things he will tweet at me will be different.
All right,
it's so funny what is going on online.
Gentlemen, I'd like to
we
thank
can't divide the country and then expect that the president will come and fix something
well, you
overnight.
Ayo Yalawo, thank you very much.
started.
Ayo Yalawo is a member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Tony Hillebo is a member of the digital team of the Atiku Presidential Campaign Council. And of course, in Lagos, we have Mr. Akin Oshuntokun, who is the Southwest leader of the Labour Party. Thank you very much for your time. Well, that's Sunday Politics. Thanks for your time, and see you tomorrow on Politics Today. Goodbye.